This is going to be a fairly short video because the video that I had originally planned for this week, I've had to postpone. I've got a bunch of stuff going on this week and I haven't finished doing the research for the thing that I had in mind. So instead, this time around, I'm going to talk about how I've been choosing the subjects for this video because the more I think about it, the more I realize it's kind of interesting on its own and something worth putting on the table. When I first started this channel, the thing that I most wanted to do was find a way to differentiate myself. I didn't want to just sit down and talk about my favorite things and how much I like them. Because number one, there's a lot of people doing that. And that in itself is not a bad thing. It's the kind of thing where I said to myself, I could do that. And I've done that for a long time on my own blog. But I've started to feel like I've run into the limits of doing just that, of just talking about my favorite things and why I like them. What I wanted to do was find a lens, a focus, a way to take all of the stuff that I'm interested in and to look at it in a certain light and to find things that I think are most worth talking about in that light. And some of those things may be favorites of mine and other things of those may be discoveries. I can save the gushing for my blog. And again, I did that. And over time, I found that the more I gushed, the less I actually had to say. I had more to say, and I work the best when I find I have something to offer that's tied into some specific prescriptive course of action, some specific takeaway that people can use when I talk about something instead of just go watch this thing or go read this thing and enjoy it. Like one of the things that I've thought about talking about on this channel, one of my favorite movies, Seven Samurai. I could talk about Seven Samurai all day. I could talk about Kurosawa all day. But I also feel like all the great stuff that I could say about it, at least right now, are things that have been better said by other people who make analysis of cinema into their main thing. It's a little tough for me to relate it back to my main subject in a way that feels like it would be really transformative. It feels like low-hanging fruit, honestly. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there are a great many people who would be really interested in seeing how I could unpack this in terms of how science fiction and fantasy can be informed by a story like Seven Samurai. And it has many times. But my impulse is not to reach for the things that are obvious. Again, because a lot of other people have talked about that exact film and have, to some degree, talked about it in that exact light. My impulse is to go further afield. It's to look for things many other folks don't always seem as familiar with. It's to be an evangelist. I see a lot of things out there that I think many people, especially people who want to write SF or fantasy, they may not be familiar with. And I feel like it's a good thing to at least wave it under their nose and say, hey, do you know anything about this? Because I found this to be really useful to me, and here's why. I see a lot of things that I think need that kind of broadcasting. So that's where I feel that my efforts are going to pay off the most. It's when I'm covering ground that I don't feel has already been trodden very heavily, and when I'm offering it in a way that gives people something specifically to do with it. So if I'm not talking about a given thing that seems like a shoe-in, it may just be because I don't want to repeat what other people have said, and they may well have said it better than I can say it, and in a context that's more fitting of talking about it that way. Now again, just talking about this, just laying it out like this has made me think about how there may be ways to do that. There may be ways to go to something that I find really personally stimulating and enjoyable and that I would easily put on a list of favorites or best of and unpack that. And every now and then I do run into something like that. I talked about Traffic, for instance. There's another movie that is in the same vein that I have been struggling to figure out how to talk about. And I think it's symptomatic of this struggle that I'm in, that I was saying to myself, I don't really have a way to do that. I don't really have a way that fits my lens. And until I do, I'm just not going to talk about it, especially not when I have so many other things that do fit and that are also less obvious choices that are more genuinely interesting and surprising. So as things unfold here, I think I'm going to continue to follow this pattern where I look for the things that galvanize me in some way and that are also not necessarily things everybody might know about. I'm not going to sit and try to unpack all the things that are my favorite and then try to force fit them into this paradigm, because I'm finding that doesn't work at all. Anyway, next week I should be back with another full-length video where I am talking about something that I think really fits the bill. So I'll catch you then.